Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary, Ashton, and this is our NXT review. Not a bad episode of NXT, to say the least. I mean, some really fun matches on tonight's show. I think we got one, maybe two backstage segments, but there really weren't many. This is more of a wrestle-heavy episode. And we've already got our centerpiece for NXT TakeOver San Antonio. That was decided tonight in the Fatal 4-Way Elimination Match main event. Winner becomes the number one contender for Shinsuke Nakamura's NXT Championship. I had a lot of fun with this NXT. That's why Wednesday nights are always a good night to be a wrestling fan most of the time. Ashton, what do you think about this NXT tonight?
Yeah, I mean, it's really good that we've got our NXT TakeOver San Antonio card shaping up already. That is, I believe, 5 weeks away, 4.5 maybe, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, it is. It's a 5.5 weeks away because it's on Saturday, January 28th. So it's 5.5 weeks away, or you could just say that it's 38 days away. And we are already, one match in and possibly two, depending on how they decide to build the women's championship, but nothing set in stone there. So we'll just say one. We know that our NXT World Championship match at San Antonio is going to be Shinsuke Nakamura versus Bobby Roode.
Yes, and I'll be giving my thoughts on that main event, as I'm sure you will as well, when we're discussing the Fatal 4-Way Elimination match later in the show. For now, however, are there any other preliminary remarks you would like to make about tonight's NXT?
Also, just kind of back you up, and there was exactly one backstage segment tonight, and it was the Asuka interview.
All right, thank you very much, partner. That's what I thought. With that said, let us get right into our first segment, Heat of the Night. Honestly, no heats tonight here outside of the usual complaints, but honestly, I wasn't even really too bothered by commentary or anything of that nature tonight. So yeah, I'd say this is an episode of NXT where I have a clean slate. No complaints whatsoever. I just really had fun with the show. What about you, partner?
I don't really have any heats of the night. I'm worried, and I guess you could classify this as more of like a potential future nitpick than a current one, but I am worried that if Ty Dillinger keeps on losing, that the crowd is going to lose interest because, even though you can beat a guy a few times to try and get that sympathy, I don't think Ty needs any more sympathy at this point. And for him to just keep on losing is doing nothing for him. There are some characters where they need to lose a lot in order to stay relevant, but I don't necessarily think that he's one of them. And even if I did think that he was one of them, I feel like he's lost enough at this point already. It's time for Dillinger to prove that he can get the job done and that he's not just a flash in the pan.
You know what? I'm going to respond to that, not here, but again in the same Fatal 4-Way discussion, because I have a lot to say about both Roode and Dillinger, because this match really centered on them. So for the time being, is that the only nitpick that you had?
Right. Well, and I feel like I have an idea of what you're going to say about that. So before we even get to that point, I do want to say that I really did intentionally word what I said the way I did, meaning I don't mind Ty not winning right now or really not being in contention for the championship right now, but I do worry that by the time he does get into contention for the championship, it might be too late. NXT might have struck a little bit late. The iron might not be as hot as it should be by that time.
Right. And I can certainly understand that concern. We'll talk more about it in full later in the show. For now, let us get right into our NXT review. And if I'm not mistaken, we open up with Billie Kay versus Daria Berenato. And honestly, you know what? This match was booked exactly how I would have done it. If you're going to present Daria as this person with this legit MMA background, I liked her waistlock takedown in the beginning where she really just kind of slides right into it. I thought that looked rather cool. She gets some punches in there. And, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, to their credit, because they really are amazing, and I'm loving their work right now. They're really selling the fear, selling like, oh man, we really didn't want to be in this situation. But yeah, Billie Kay takes a little bit of a beating, and right when Daria is kind of in her groove, Peyton Royce comes in, slams her back against the apron, when Daria tries defending herself, throws her back into the ring. Billie Kay gets her boot, and she gets the win. I think that rode the line perfectly between maintaining the presentation you want to do with Daria's character as, again, this MMA fighter, while at the same time not making the heels lose credibility. Heel 101, you get the cheap win, and Billie Kay capitalized on a very opportunistic kind of table setting by Peyton Royce with the back into the apron setup. So I thought this was booked quite nicely. Our worst fears of Daria actually winning were not realized. And then after the match, they cut a promo more or less calling out Asuka, saying they think it's a joke that she says there's no competition left and that she runs the division because they run the division around here. So overall, guys, if you're a fan of Billie Kay or Peyton Royce, for my money, I thought this was a very good night for us. What did you think, partner?
Yeah, I definitely, oh man, I feel like the constant downer here, but I was disappointed that Daria got as much offense and that she was as dominant as she was. Like, I just feel like somebody of Billie Kay's caliber shouldn't have to win by cheating. She should be perfectly capable of winning, cleanly on her own, especially against somebody as inexperienced as Daria.
I mean, look, dude, if we're looking at it from an objective standpoint, like who these performers are as people, I completely agree with you. But if we're looking at it in more of a kayfabe mindset, that they're presenting Daria as like this legit, almost Ken Shamrock-esque type performer, like, oh, this MMA background, this and that, I can understand why they'd have Billie and Peyton not only sell the fear, but for Billie to take a little bit of a beating, because you gotta figure out what exactly you want out of it. Now, obviously, as a Billie Kay and Peyton Royce fan, I wouldn't have cared if they squashed Daria. But if we're looking at NXT's interests, where they really do want to build a division, and they, for the moment anyway, want Daria to experience inclusion in that division, they're trying to build her up in their own way. So,
right. I guess my whole thing is, I feel like Billie and Peyton are going to be treated this way, where they are kind of these overly inflated ego heels, but they still manage to only win when they cheat. I would rather see them doing that on the main roster than in NXT, because in NXT they're losing to super green, inexperienced relative scrubs like Daria, whereas at least on the main roster they would be losing to the likes of either like a Becky Lynch or a Sasha Banks or a Bayley or someone like that, like someone with some credibility, somebody that they don't really have much business beating yet. But right now, the way that things are going, I just can't get behind them being in this role in NXT. The talent level doesn't match the role. They're way better than this.
And that I would agree with on that end of like where they are. It's the same way with Ty Dillinger, and I think I shared on this podcast the story that Cody told, that Dusty's like, hey, he's main roster ready. I can't give this guy notes. He gets it.
And Dusty knows. I mean, not to be insensitive, but Dusty's been dead for over a year now, so that just goes to show you how long Ty has been ready.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, Dusty was saying that about Ty for a long time, and he hasn't been with us for over a year, and that still rings true. The same way with Billie and Peyton, you're talking about two very great workers, at what they do, play the heel role to me to perfection. And again, I thought this was a good outing relative to what we could have gotten. I'm glad to see that NXT is tempering their expectations, and they're saying, hey, we can have this mystique about Daria, but that doesn't mean we have to sacrifice this great heel tandem we have going on right now. And then the promo.
Do you know who I think I would have appreciated more in this role?
Who?
Somebody like if you had to, because NXT, they like to have their sort of Mean Girls factions. It kind of started off with Summer and Sasha, and then it was Summer, Sasha, and Charlotte, and then just Sasha and Charlotte, and then Sasha and Becky, and then Emma and Dana. And now we've got Billie and Peyton. I feel like they could have done something with this whole Tough Enough thing, and having Mandy Sachs, whatever you want to call her, Amanda from Tough Enough, teaming up with another more polished female heel and then they could have had this program with Daria. That would have been believable because you've got two relatively inexperienced, relatively green, still entertaining, but not necessarily somebody that you would want on the main roster yet, talents in the ring. And if one of them gets a lot of offense over the other and you want to explain that away with, oh, well, MMA training, it makes sense. But this isn't an MMA match. It's a professional wrestling match. And Billie Kay has been wrestling for like 8 times the amount of time that Daria has. So it just took me out of it. I didn't like that. I really not even didn't. I can't even say didn't. I don't like that Billie and Peyton are in the role that they're in right now. I feel like they deserve much better. And I feel like this whole developmental conundrum needs to kind of pick one side or the other, whether you're going to be developmental and push girls like Daria, or if you're going to be a full-blown brand and have the touring brand and that kind of stuff, and you would want Billie and Peyton to still be around.
And you know what? I can certainly appreciate your sentiments on that subject, and I think if I was to say anything, we would start a circle jerk. So I'm just going to say that I do agree wholeheartedly. They are very talented, and they do deserve better, but at least they got the win tonight, and I thought they cut a great promo putting Asuka on notice. Do you have anything else you want to say about this segment?
Don't have anything to actually, yeah, I do, because after the match they cut a promo calling out Asuka.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I thought it was a solid promo. They say that they kind of scoff at the fact that Asuka has said that there's no competition left. Peyton Royce even says please, and they pretty much say,
honestly, I've always known that Billie Kay could work on mic. Peyton impressed me on this. She actually cut a way better promo than I was aware that she had the ability to cut, because I've always seen Billie as the talker between the two, but Peyton, when she gets that growly voice going on, she can get some intensity up going through her. And yeah, I thought she was great on the mic here tonight.
Yeah, and I loved them both. I thought there was great synergy between them, both calling out Asuka and saying, hey.
I mean, like I said, I already knew Billie Kay could cut a promo. That wasn't
right.
like, she delivered what I expected. Peyton over-delivered my expectations.
Right. And they both tell Asuka, hey, when you've got the guts, we'll be waiting. So pretty much trying to paint Asuka as the coward in this situation when they have the numbers advantage. It's great heel work, and I think they're excellent.
Yeah, and I also, you almost have to wonder if this is leading to something. You have to wonder if it's going to be a triple threat or a handicap match, or if Regal would make them choose one or the other to do the fight.
Yeah. And I've been wondering the same, because, I was going to save this for later when we got to our backstage segment, but since you mentioned it, I'm even wondering if we're going to get, a fatal four-way at TakeOver San Antonio, given that Nikki Cross has also been eyeing Asuka.
It's so funny to me because that feels premature. So much of what NXT does feels behind the 8 ball, feels like it's behind the curve, feels like they're doing it too late, too little too late. Whereas with Nikki Cross, I feel like they're jumping the gun. I feel like they should wait to use her in the women's championship picture until it's on more of a solid, like, pure babyface, where Asuka is more of like an in-betweener, kind of even leaning heel in some cases. But obviously she's going to be the babyface going against Billie and Peyton.
Right. So, my thing is we could see a fatal four-way. I would be more intrigued by it just being a triple threat, but then, like you said, like Billie and Peyton would have to hash out, or Regal would have to hash out for them, like who's going to be representing that tandem in the championship mix. But it's great to see that they're going to get in that spot, especially for Billie Kay, who, remember, this all kind of snowballed for her when she had that one appearance on SmackDown. And then she does a little thing with Ember for Ember's TakeOver debut. And I thought she was going to lose momentum and start back at square one, but she's still been chugging along. And now she really does seem like in a position where she's going to be challenging for the title, which I think is so cool. Very, very happy for her and Peyton. If they both get in on it, I think, again, they're both insanely talented. So good stuff. What came after their promo, though? Unless you have anything else you want to say about it.
Yeah, after the promo, we had the second match of the night. Actually, was the Authors of Pain versus I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly, and really not so much pronunciation as I hope I typed their names out correctly when I typed my notes. John Ordigan and Anthony Bowens.
Yeah, and I actually think this was the match that had the wrestling community talking because of the powerbomb spot. And
my big thing is, like, I almost have to question if this was meant to be a work or if this was a legit botch. And first of all, if it was meant to be a work, I mean, sure, whatever makes sense. But if this was a legit botch, and everything that I've seen points to it was a real botch, I feel like it's almost distasteful to even air this match, because, like, that guy could have died.
yeah, and see, I'm glad you said something, dude, because I wasn't going to make it a nitpick or a heat of the night, but I will say, like, I was curious when people were sharing the GIFs and everything, is this match going to be aired? If it is going to be aired, is it going to be, like, severely edited? And I don't think any of that happened. Like, I didn't feel like this was edited, did you? Because I feel like we got it in full here.
It wasn't edited at all, and I think the worst part is, after this guy was knocked loopy, had Akam and Razor picking him up and trying to do offense on him. Like, these guys are green, and that right there is the burning example that we all kind of needed to see, to realize that even though their matches can be entertaining, they still have a long road to travel.
You know, it was really a weird experience for me, because it's kind of like, you know, when you have a certain belief, or maybe you feel a certain way about somebody, and then just something comes along to really jolt your senses, to show you what reality is. And, you know, I was really warming up on these guys. I was really digging these guys, their last few performances. But then something like this, it just reminds you how green they are yet. And thank goodness. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't mean to be.
You know what, too? That really does kind of bring me back to, this is why, no matter how hard WWE tries to duplicate something that Lucha Underground might do, they just are never going to be as good as the original, because Lucha Underground didn't hire a couple of random big scary looking green guys, or even a big random scary looking green guy to play Matanza. They got somebody that's been wrestling for, I think, 8 years now, and somebody who's a former Olympian. So,
right.
You know, like, they actually did their homework, whereas WWE, it feels very much an artificial ripoff. Granted, they made them a tag team, and the gimmick eventually developed into its own thing, where it was originally just a Matanza ripoff, and now it feels more unique because they don't have the masks anymore. But still, like, this is what happens when you decide to give that green light push to unproven talent. And I'll also say, this is the kind of thing that happens when you can't decide whether your show is developmental or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because look, not to get morbid here or anything, but when I saw that GIF and I heard all the hubbub about it, I was kind of holding my breath thinking, are we going to hear a follow-up report that that guy died? Like, it looked bad. I didn't know how badly he got roughed up. Thankfully, we didn't hear anything, so I'm assuming he's okay, like he's out of the worst part of the woods now. But the idea that they'd air it, and see, that's another thing, though, because I have to imagine in their mind, now I'm not defending why they did it. Again, like, I like to try and get in their mindset and try and employ their logic. They're probably thinking, oh, well, yeah, it looks nasty, but it still fits the gimmick. You know, smoke and mirrors, we could just make it seem like, oh, they're real monsters. But when you look at the legitimate human stakes here, like, god damn, I can joke about scummy things and being an asshole all day long. There's one thing about joking about it and making a presentation that isn't real. And then there's real legitimate risk and real harm to people. You know, the line is clear as day. And I personally feel like, to a degree, WWE certainly crossed it here. You know, I don't want to entirely give up on the Authors of Pain, but let all the remarks that you made on this, which I completely agree with, be a cautionary tale about what happens when you put guys that are really green in a ring on your product, you know, with other guys, try and push them and you know, give them a narrative to work with. I do like these guys. I do see an upside, but things like this scare the shit out of you, as they should.
Well, and really, the really scary thing is, this was, I mean, for the company's sake, not obviously for the guy that got knocked loopy and these horrible possible things that could have happened, not for him, but for the company, this was best case scenario, because this happened to a couple of guys that you brought in for a one-off to job. If this would have been the Revival or DIY, and it's entirely possible that could have been, but it wasn't, and the company lucked out big time because of that.
Definitely. Without question, they did. Because if this would have happened to one of the more premier talents on the brand, I mean, God only knows. You know, that's why I cringe so hard when Hideo got injured off of that really like bad looking power slam. You know, it was worse for NXT then because that was a premier talent. And he had just come off of an injury that was even bigger than that. And again, like I only bring that up. I know it's disconnected from the AOP, but back to the central point of this is what happens when your dichotomy between developmental and actual, you know, network brand really is blurred. And it's not clearly defined. I think these are the consequences you reap from that. Again, I don't want to full-blown condemn these guys or be like, oh, I'm giving up on them, but you got to be honest. They're really green. This is a situation that green people, and we've seen it twice now. The one guy with Hideo, whose name escapes me at the moment, but he's green as goose shit. Riddick Moss, green as goose shit, and AOP, even though they seem like they were getting in a groove and really understanding the gimmick and understanding what they're supposed to do, like they took no precaution to protect that guy. And then what really scared me, to your point, they were getting ready to do more to him, and thank goodness that ref stepped in. And NXT probably aired it again because they're thinking, oh, well, that makes him look really down. I mean, a stoppage. That's just insane. We have to air it. But when you realize what underpins all this, you know, real, again, legitimate risk, really makes you uncomfortable to watch. I know I was seeing it back, and I'm like, oh, man, this is it. So yeah, AOP win due to a ref stoppage, and yeah, I'm just really glad that guy's okay.
All right, well, it's definitely a conversation I feel like we needed to have, but I'm ready to be done with it. So up next, let's talk about the post-match Ellering promo. He did say that all roads lead to San Antonio. So we don't care if it's DIY or the Revival. The Authors of Pain are on a seek and destroy mission to become NXT Tag Team Champions.
That's right. I do believe that NXT Tag Title match is next week, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll know our tag title match for San Antonio as well, which I'm really glad to see. NXT really not wasting any time, you know, trying to maximize every moment that they're talking about San Antonio to putting the card together. I definitely think it's going to be DIY, obviously. I'm just kind of looking forward to what the Revival is going to do. Are they going to be on Raw? Are they going to be on SmackDown? And what are they going to do when they get there? Or are they going to stay on NXT for a while? I mean, that's an option I really haven't given much thought to. So it should be a really fun rematch, and the Authors of Pain are waiting for him in San Antonio, and God, I hope that match goes well, because again, after you see what we witnessed, kind of shakes the confidence a little, but I'm sure everything will be fine. That's all I got to say about that.
Up next, we had the Asuka interview where she basically just says Billie and Peyton are no competition for her, and then walks away. And Nikki Cross, we actually see her. She was kind of peeking around from the interview set, so she was watching Asuka. So dropping hints there that she's going to be going after the Women's Championship as well as Peyton and Billie.
Yeah, and you know, we already kind of gave our thoughts about how the women's championship match in San Antonio could break down, so I'm not really going to add much here. Again, I think it's smart, and they've really been consistent about this, which I have to commend NXT for, that they really make Asuka synced on the mic, particularly in these backstage interviews, which she does, you know, primarily as opposed to in-ring mic work. And Nikki Cross, you know, with the whole laugh thing, you know, it's whatever. I do agree with you. It's a bit premature because I'd like to see Nikki actually assert herself in the division first before staking a claim, which I can at least give the credit that Billie and Peyton have done that and have been doing that. But NXT is going to do what it wants to do. So I'm just excited for how this whole thing's going to shake out.
Absolutely. All right. So then we had a big, like probably 5+ minute. They've even been closing in on 10 minutes. I don't know. Big video package for Ty Dillinger, Andrade, Cien, Almas, Roddy Strong, and Bobby Roode, and their path to this four-way tonight. Really just building up the four-way. You know, we got Ty kind of telling his story about how he's been around for a long time, and it took a while to get where he is, and he wants to take that next step. Andrade talking about how he is done with everyone else, and he's going to be caring only about himself from here on out. Roderick Strong talking about how he's the most precise and vicious person that's come around in a long time in the wrestling business. And then Bobby just doing his old glorious shtick. So what do you think of this video package, John?
I loved it. You know, I will say this because I think I saw some people that are like, oh, I wish there was more time to let this match develop and breathe, because everything seemed to happen like so fast. But at the same time, like, I do understand there is a takeover to build to. And, you know, sometimes you just got to format things a certain way. So while this video package and whole thing hyping up the Fatal 4-Way was a bit long and kind of surprised me, I did enjoy it. It was great even seeing guys that really haven't talked much in NXT yet, like Roderick Strong and like heel Andrade, giving their thoughts, even though I'm sure we all knew how this match was going to go. I really enjoyed it. Definitely got me pumped for the Fatal 4-Way and a great thing to lead into the match here. So, yeah, good stuff.
And then we got the match. We got our big 4-way here for the #1 contendership to the NXT title. Bobby Roode versus Andrade Cien Almas versus Roderick Strong versus Ty Dillinger. And yeah, it was a solid match. It got, I think, almost like 20 minutes, so it got quite a bit of time. Wasn't really anything too super exciting about it, I don't think, but it was just a solid all-around match from beginning to end.
Yeah, certainly. You know, again, it's funny because the fan in me was rooting for Andrade because I've been loving his work so much since turning. But I knew he had no chance to win.
The first one eliminated.
I know. And you know what? I figured that would happen too. Although I thought there might have been a chance that Roderick would get eliminated before him, and we'd have an interesting, like, 3 people remaining with the 2 heels and the 1 babyface, but it was not to be. You know, the sick kick took him out. While he was in there, I enjoyed him, you know, especially the double knees in the corner of Dillinger. That looked sick. But, yeah,
Dude,
he wasn't meant to last.
Andrade's overhead chops.
Yes.
Disgusting.
I know, dude. I was like, yeah, Andrade, assert yourself. I was loving it. I was into every bit of offense he had. Cool Tower of Doom spot 2 in this match. Roderick getting eliminated by Ty Dillinger with the tiebreaker, I thought was great because giving Ty an elimination, I feel like kind of bolsters his credibility. Like, you know, because the whole story is he wants to play with the main event guys, and he eliminated Roderick Strong, which anybody who knows their wrestling history and is especially intimate with the indie scene, like, you know how decorated Roderick Strong is. So that was big for Ty. And then the final showdown between Ty Dillinger and Bobby Roode. I got to give both these guys credit, particularly Dillinger again. I mean, his work is impeccable. I mean, dare I say you could call it a perfect 10. The crowd was so into him, which to me, he kind of exceeds the bar because the crowd is so into Roode, albeit I really should say they're so into his theme, but that kind of envelops everything else that I'm like, oh man, is that going to detract from Dillinger? Not a bit. They were solidly behind him. And I got to credit NXT. They even got me. Because while I'm like, oh yeah, Bobby Roode's winning, Bobby Roode's winning, Bobby Roode's winning, when Dillinger got the tiebreaker on Roode to counter the glorious DDT, my mouth even kind of, I'm like, what? And he hooks the leg like so quickly after that. It's not even like a stalling thing. I'm like, does he have this? And then the false finish. Nicely done. I love when I can suspend my disbelief, even for a moment. And NXT got me there. So I have to give him all the credit in the world. I love that Ty was persistent about the tiebreaker too. I thought that was a really nice, like, he found new ways to try and set up the move, you know, and I love that persistence because he was just so determined to just like, okay, if I could just get one more shot off, I can beat Roode. And I thought that was great. But then Roode kind of hangs Dillinger's throat up, kind of stuns him on the top rope. That dazes Dillinger. And then Roode gets the glorious DDT. It's going to be Roode and Nakamura at San Antonio. But you know what, to me, because I know that the nitpick you had at the beginning, and I do agree with what you're saying, because I've seen it in wrestling before, where you've got this really hot baby face, and maybe you finally give him the strap, but the crowd no longer cares. I mean, that's pretty much the synopsis for Ring of Honor Wrestling, if I've ever heard it. But, you know, my thing is, I'm hoping it's not too late, but I will tell you what I do know. I am convinced after this exchange and the story they told in here, Ty Dillinger is going to be the one to end Roode's NXT Championship reign, which leads into another revelation for me. I know it's super early, but for the moment, and I could always change it for NXT TakeOver San Antonio, preview and predictions, but I'm thinking Roode's actually going to beat Nakamura. I think the big story here really is Roode and Dillinger over that championship. I mean, my mind could change, but right now, because that exchange and how into it the crowd was and everything, I think NXT is going to take that all the way as far as they can, and it's going to culminate in Dillinger becoming NXT champion, which could be a huge moment if they don't wait too long and they play their cards right. So, great match, another great outing for Dillinger, and the only reason I'm not going to have a rant to follow that is because I think NXT is starting to realize that. Let's hope they they used that realization the right way per your nitpick. But yeah, I thought this was a really fun outing for all four guys.
The other possibility, though, if you think about it, is that Ty gets called up before he even has a chance to take the title off Bobby Roode.
That is true. I mean, look, NXT, and we've heard Triple H say this, right, in conference calls, because I know you and I have listened to quite a few of them, since we knew they were a thing and we could do that. And I remember one he had where he said, hey, I could have plans for a talent, and I get the call, and they say, hey, Vince wants this guy. And then our plans kind of get upended. And that very well could happen with Dillinger. We don't know. The guy could be slated to be NXT champion, and then Triple H gets that fateful phone call, hey, we want Dillinger for SmackDown Live. And then, he's just got to wrap up his business there. No NXT championship. And this is coming from a guy that, like, with the Johnny scumbag in me, I love ragging on Dillinger every review. I even did it to hype up our NXT TWitWoW tonight. But in all sincerity, I think Ty Dillinger has really entered that Enzo and Cass territory in the sense where if he doesn't win the big thing he's been aspiring for, it'll leave me a little bit empty. I mean, I'll get over it, obviously, but I'll feel like, man, that seems like a job unfinished to me. And I think Dillinger's really there for me right now with the NXT title. Like, I can't envision him now after this performance tonight, after the emotion in that arena, after coming up short again, not having an NXT championship reign in the future. And I was already kind of saying that before, but that was more on the merit of how good he is. Now I'm saying it on the merit with the story being told here. I would feel unfulfilled if it didn't have that punctuation to it. But right. Just another great
I feel like that's definitely the story that they want to kind of plant in your brain. But at the same time, they, when I say they in this context, I'm referring to the NXT writing team. They don't control who gets called up when. So if Vince decides, I want Dillinger to be number 10 in the Royal Rumble, for example, then those plans are going to need to change. And Dillinger is going to have that, like you said, kind of that Enzo and Cass feeling where, no matter how much he got over, he never ended up with a championship.
Right, yeah. And I'll tell you, I mean, Bobby Roode, I like the swagger. I like the confidence, even if he's not necessarily like this nuanced or really like detailed heel. I think he's enough, especially relative to Nakamura's overness. He's a good enough foil for this match at TakeOver San Antonio. I think with his in-ring work and his smugness and everything, they could have a good TakeOver main event. And honestly, just like Charlotte and Sasha Banks, I'm welcoming the new here. I'm just glad it's not Joe, and I love Joe to death, but I want to see him on the main roster killing people. To be fair, I'd like to see Nakamura doing the same thing, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. So Roode Nakamura, I think, could be a very fun TakeOver main event. I'm looking forward to it. And again, right now, just because of all that energy I felt in those closing moments and everything, I'm almost ready to just call it for Roode and say that he's going to win it right there, and we get this ball rolling with Roode Dillinger as soon as possible. So we'll see. But, yeah, Roode gets the job done. He's going to San Antonio.
Man, NXT World Title picture has been a real clusterfuck lately, hasn't it?
Absolutely, my man. Absolutely.
That is Joe Nakamura shit, and now they're going to end up putting the title on Roode, and he's going to be the top heel, even though the crowd cheers for him and sings his song for him.
I'm really curious what his reaction would be like if he'd get the proper reaction if he changed his theme. Because I guarantee you that'd probably get the loudest boos in recent NXT history when, like, they're waiting for that glorious, they're waiting for that piano, and it doesn't come. Like, that would probably be an outburst on itself. And then I wonder if Roode, through his own efforts, could sustain that heat. I'm very curious about that because, yeah, we already talked about how the theme kind of screws him over. But, yeah, it is what it is.
Yep. All right. Well, up next we have. Actually, that was it. That was the end of the show. So up next, what we're gonna do is
high spots and low shots. So my low shot.
I loved the inflection on that. You need to keep that up.
Yeah, I was really in a mood tonight. I'm in a good mood after all the quality wrestling we got. So I thought, why the hell not?
Do it forever, John.
Oh, okay. Dial it back. But yeah, my low shot, I'm going to say, is Daria Berenato, because you think you're bad, but you ain't shit. You got beat tonight, and you're not even in the conversation for the NXT Women's Championship, or in other words, you're right where you belong. So, yeah, Daria is my low shot. Who's your low shot?
Yeah, well, I think I have to give my low shot to Andrade Cien Almas because, you know, he ended up being the first person eliminated tonight, and he got eliminated by the newest newcomer to NXT in the match.
Yeah, that feels right. You know what? I'm not saying it will, but my silver lining in that, because I'm such a huge fan of Andrade now that he is doing what he's supposed to be doing, and that's being heel. I'm actually kind of hoping him and Roderick have a match at TakeOver. I think those two could kill it.
That'd be really nice, yeah.
Yeah, I think those two could kill it. So I'm kind of hoping that because Roderick, because he was even kind of measuring, if you saw out of the corner of your eye, like Andrade was like getting ready to pin Dillinger, and Roderick's like, just turn around. Then he gets the sick kick. I'd love if maybe Andrade in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, like costs Roderick a match, and then it just leads those two a TakeOver. I think those two could kill it. I want it now. But yeah, getting back on point, I definitely agree with your low shot. See, it's kind of a mixed bag for me because on one hand, I'm right, which is never a bad feeling in the sense that villainy always wins because Bobby Roode won tonight. But on the other hand, it wasn't the villain I wanted. For as big a Bobby Roode fan as I am, I'm a much bigger fan in such a short time of Andrade Cien Almas. So really sucks he was the first one eliminated, but them's the breaks. High spot. Who's going to be my high? You know what? I'll take the easy freaking pickings. Bobby Roode. He's number one contender. He's main eventing the next TakeOver, which is a huge responsibility in my mind on his shoulders. I don't think him and Nakamura have ever worked together. So that's a first-time matchup in every sense of the word. So in that sense, I really am looking forward to it. I'm intrigued what they could put together. And yeah, Bobby Roode may soon be calling himself NXT champion. So he's my high spot.
All right, that works. And that said, my high spot is going to have to be Asuka because, she's talking about how she always wants this competition, and she's got 3 potential women gunning for her championship. Now, if that's not competition, I don't know what is. And really, I can appreciate that she's kind of the predator, and rather than being, aggressive and being the active one and hunting her prey, she just got the prize that all of her prey want, so they have to come to her.
Yeah, I really couldn't have articulated it better, partner. And might I tack on to that, and I wish I would have thought to say this when we're talking about the women's segments, in a way, I do think this is a natural progression of her title reign. Like, if there's no competition for her in a 1v1 context, because she handles them so easily, why not just pile on the numbers? I feel like they're kind of doing that in reverse order, because with every kind of monster that appears on the main roster, like a Ryback or a Strowman, they build up relatively quickly to that. And with Asuka, it's taken them this long. Like, she's never been in a multi-woman title defense yet. So I think this is definitely a natural progression for her reign. And I completely agree with your pick. So, yeah, great stuff. With that said, are there any concluding remarks you have about NXT?
I don't think so. I'm actually quite looking forward to what we're going to be doing on Sunday.
Absolutely, and I'll get to that in a moment. But for now, guys, this has been NXT. This has been TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John. That's my co-host and commentary agent. Guys, be sure to comment, subscribe, and like the video. The more likes we get on this video, the more likely we are to be the top search result for NXT reviews. And as I've said so many times before, when you're the best at what you do, the top is exactly where you belong. So please, guys, if you enjoyed this review, if you enjoy us talking about NXT like this, give a like, show your support, fuck with YouTube's algorithm. And now, guys, with that out of the way, I want to plug 2 things. First and foremost, you already know all the amazing media to check out because of my partner's amazing backgrounds. 2 things I want to plug, though. 1, Q&A. It's after midnight now, so it's the 22nd. You have 8 days to submit questions for Q&A. I was even getting questions, a few days ago. So questions are still coming in, and you still have time. You have until the 30th to submit your questions. Get in on the last Q&A of the year for 2016. 8 days to do it. Now, the way it works, you can submit questions through Twitter. You can @ either myself or Ashton. Our Twitter handles are on the background. You can go to our Facebook page. If you do, be sure to leave a like on that page, please. It would be greatly appreciated. And you can message us your questions there. Or when this video is done processing, you can comment on it with your questions. That's fine too. You have a multitude of avenues that you can take to get your questions in for the last Q&A of 2016. You have a maximum of 5 questions. Does not mean you have to use all 5, but just know you have 5 questions that you can ask. And as far as how these questions are to be divided, again, that is entirely up to you. To give a very straightforward example, if you wanted to ask me all 5 questions and give none to Ashton for that month, that's totally fine. I mean, you might be a feelings hurter, but that's totally fine. But in all seriousness, if you also wanted to have all 5 for both of us, and you believe sharing is caring and you wanted us to get in on all of it, that's great too. However you want to divvy up these questions, that's your power to wield. The other thing I want to plug, the Patreon. Now with Patreon, if any prospective donors are curious, go on our Patreon, check out the price points, because with your generous donations, you could request either a review, a live reactions, or if you're really feeling generous, you can buy a package that bundles both a review and live reactions to the same show of your request. Now, if you're curious about what these Patreon reviews are like, I got 3 points for you. The first is Survivor Series 2002. That was the first Patreon review we did, and in my heart, one of the best TWitWoW reviews we've ever done. I had a shit ton of fun covering that show. Most recently, we did Halloween Havoc 1997. Oh, I got some rants out of my system on that one. So you have both of those things that you could go to on the channel right now to check them out. Now, you heard my partner say a few moments ago he's looking forward to Sunday. On Sunday, it's Christmas, TWitWoW, and more importantly, strong style, because we are doing live reactions to, I believe, the last 3 matches of Kingdom of Wrestling, it's called, Ashton? Am I right about that, partner? Am I getting the name right? I believe it's Kingdom of Wrestling with New Japan, correct?
No, it's King of Pro Wrestling.
King of Pro Wrestling, okay. Last 3 matches there are going to be live reactions, so not a review, so a bit different here, which I like because it shows you the variances in the Patreon rewards for those that choose to donate. You've got 2 reviews, and now you're going to see what live reactions are like. It is going to be a fun freaking time on Sunday. Come celebrate your Christmas after you have enough eggnog in your system, and you've gotten plenty of action under the mistletoe with TWitWoW, because we do Christmas right, baby.
And for those of you wondering what said 3 matches are going to be, we are looking at Katsuyori Shibata versus Kyle O'Reilly for the Never Openweight Championship, versus Hirooki Goto for the right to face the IWGP Heavyweight Champion on the January 4th Tokyo Dome show, aka Wrestle Kingdom 11, and Kazuchika Okada versus Naomichi Marufuji for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship.
Ooh, G1 Climax 2016 rematch. That's going to be amazing to live react to. Hell, all 3 of those matches sound like they're going to be amazing to live react to. So, guys, again, come spend your Christmas by the fire with TWitWoW live reactions. 3 barn burner matches. It's can't miss. That'll be Sunday at 8. And, guys, until then, my friends, tune in and peace out.